In today's video, we'll be upgrading the screen in my 2015 BMW X1 E84. This comes with an 8-inch screen in it. It's not the greatest screen in the world, but it was fine for 2015 standards. It has an iDrive system in it, AM/FM radio, Sirius XM satellite radio, and of course access to all the iDrive features. But it's rather limited, and one of the main reasons I wanted to upgrade my screen was I wanted to be able to have Android Auto. So I've got this 12.3-inch Android touchscreen that we're going to be installing today. This is going to look fantastic. It's going to give you native Android on your dashboard. It's going to allow you to have your navigation in there. Even though this car does come with navigation, which is in the stock screen, you'll be able to use your factory backup camera. All that's going to work with this unit. And you can access apps directly on the screen, or you can use Android Auto, or if you have an iPhone, CarPlay through it, and it's wireless. I really like using Android Auto on my Kia K5, but that's even a wired one. It doesn't even do wireless. This is going to do wireless. So let's take a closer look at the actual packaging and what we get with this unit. It's going to be plug and play. There's no splicing wires. So let's take a look at what's in the packaging, and then we'll get it installed. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what we get inside the box. Now you can see that it has some nice branding here and a nice box it comes in, so it's well protected, and it travels all the way here from China. So let's go ahead and open it up. It did have some shrink wrap, which I already removed. And there we go. So we get a warranty card in here and some instruction manuals for this particular unit. Now this should be a 6 GB of RAM, 128 GB of internal storage on this. And this is supposedly also compatible with 4G LTE wireless service here in the US. Now I don't plan on using a SIM card in it. I would just use my mobile hotspot if I wanted to connect to the unit or my home's Wi-Fi, but you do have that option. So here is the display. Let's go ahead and just open this up and we can see what this looks like here. And this one should have a blue tint to it for a better viewing. So you can see that right there. We'll take that film off when we get ready to get it installed. On the back, you're going to have some of these plugs for the Wi-Fi antenna, the stock screen in the BMW, and you got your 4-pin connector here as well. And then we should have a bunch of different harnesses and cables in here. They're all going to be compatible with the unit in the car. Now, this piece goes where the stock screen is to make it nice and flush in there to be like this, and the screen will mount onto this. And we have all these different cables and wiring harnesses. I'm not going to pull all this out, but you can see there's a bunch of it in here. And here's one other little module here. I know that there is a GPS module. I'll have to look closer to see if that's what it is, but you do have GPS so that you can use navigation on its own. So if you don't want to use your phone's navigation mirrored to the screen through CarPlay, you can use the built-in navigation. So you want to make sure when we get in there, we mount the GPS module to a nice spot that's not being obstructed or shielded too much, so we get a good GPS signal. And the same thing with, I think this is the Wi-Fi antenna right here. Again, a whole bunch of stuff in here. This big one here is going to be one of the main wiring harnesses that come off of the factory radio. So again, I'm going to pour all this out, but you can see it's a whole bunch of stuff in here that's going to be compatible with the BMW. This headphone looking jack adapter, that's going to be if we need to use the auxiliary port for our sound. And we'll have to see when we get in here how my system's wired. If you don't get sound through the speakers in the car, that means we just have to tell the iDrive system we're using an auxiliary port, and it will require this little wire to be run out and around and plug into the auxiliary jack in the front. I'll show you that when we get inside the car. And again, I don't know at this point if I'm going to have to use that. We'll test it out before we get it back together and see which way we have to do it. Either way is not a big deal. Ideally, not having to use it would be nice, since you don't have to have that little wire sticking out and plugging into the auxiliary jack. All right, guys, it gives you an idea quickly of what the packaging looks like and what it's going to be whenever you open it up. Now let's get in the car and start getting this thing installed. Okay, so the first thing we need to do before we do any of this installation is we should disconnect the negative terminal to the battery, which in this car is in the trunk. That way, in case any weird chance you get a short or something, you don't potentially fry electrical components, including the main computer in this car, which would be very expensive. So we're going to disconnect that. I won't show you how to do it. You lift it up and just take a 10mm, I believe, socket and just disconnect the negative terminal and set it off to the side so that it doesn't, bump into any metal or anything. So be careful with that. That'll cut the power. Leave your doors open, your trunk open. If you shut that stuff, and you're not going to be able to get back into the trunk with the battery disconnected, because you're going to lose that electronic unlock. So I would just recommend leaving the hatch open so you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to go do that, and then we're going to start removing this trim here, starting over in this edge here, and work back towards the vents. So let me get the battery disconnected and we'll get this started. Alright, so I have the negative battery terminal disconnected. That was simple enough. Now, one thing I wanted to show you guys real quickly, I didn't mention it over there when I was looking at the unboxing of it. It comes with a really nice instruction manual. I was impressed. Lots of this stuff you order from China, from AliExpress, you end up with no instruction manual. So this is mostly on how to operate the screen, so we're not going to go over that now, but they do mention in the very back here that you need to make sure you disconnect and reattach the optical cable if your car has that. I don't know if mine does or not. We'll see when we get in there. You'll just pop it out and put it into the new plug. So we'll make sure that we do that if mine has it, which I think it probably will, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start trying to take this trim piece out here and work over towards the middle. So let me get a trim removal tool here. There we go. There we go. All right, now that we have this popped off, really simple as you can see. I believe there's going to be a plug back in here. We're going to need to disconnect from like the hazard button here. So we'll try to unplug that here so we can get this whole piece moved out of the way. Okay, so the hazard button here looks like you just can pop this out. And once you pop it forward, it takes a little push in from the back. And I remember that I'd watched a few videos before and I forgot about that. So you're going to push it forward, and then we should be able to get this plug, mess up a plug on the car. There we go. So now this is off. I'm going to make sure we don't misplace that. So I'm going to put it in the cup holder. And now this whole piece of trim should be able to be removed. We can go set this off to the side. I'm going to set it in the back seat so it doesn't get hurt. Now, there should be a couple screws, I believe, up in here that we're going to remove. There's one up in here. You're not going to be able to see it from the video. And there's another one over here. And these are those star-shaped ends. I don't know exactly what they call those. I do have a whole set of different ones. And you probably want to be careful that you don't drop this screw down into the dashboard. So I'm going to find the right one and maybe stuff a towel or try to get something in there in case it would fall, so we don't end up trying to search for it inside the dashboard. So let me go ahead and do that. Alright, so for first try, I guess the right size. And I did put, like I said, a little towel down there. I'm going to try to be very careful to make sure that this does not fall whenever we get up the screw out. We're just going to take our time. I'm going to slowly turn this. When it feels like it's getting close to coming out, I'm going to try to get my hand up in there because it's not going to want to stick to the end of this and stay. So you really want to probably have a magnetic tip so it can hold on to the screw. I don't think these are. It's getting pretty loose. So I'm going to try to stop here and get my finger up there. Okay. And I can see it's on the tip of my finger. It does feel like it might want to try to fall. So I might get some needle-nose pliers if I can get it to stay in there so that I can grab it. Well, let's take some needle-nose pliers and see if we can just grab this screw here. Okay, I've got it. Alright. Go ahead now and put this in the cup holder, and let's go ahead and take the other one out. Alright, got that one out. Just be very careful. I don't want to lose those down the dash. Alright, I believe at this point, now this screen should be able to be popped out, I believe. Alright guys, I finally got it out. It is a real pain. It's just, this piece right here tends to get caught on the dashboard, and it feels like the whole thing's loose, but it just won't come out. I finally just put some muscle to it, don't want to break anything. And got this up over the dash here. And then this whole piece came out, and now we can actually access the screen and get these wires unplugged in the back. that are going to go into the aftermarket touchscreen. So we're just going to unplug these here. This one right here is off to the side. We need to unplug this one. Alright, so I got this unplugged. You have to really kind of work and get these wires undone and really work to get that 4-pin connector off here. So got those unplugged and get the screen out of the way. Now I think the next thing we need to do is come down here and remove this piece down at the bottom here so we can work up, and we have to get access to the back of the radio. So let's see if we can figure out how to get this undone. Okay. And just take some time working in there to get this, to get access to this. So we got this up. There's a cable here. I think this can just sort of hang out of the way here as we work our way up towards the stereo. Okay guys, a bit of an update here. I've switched to my camera to get a little better view of what's going on. This front piece that comes off in front of the stereo and the climate control and that, it's just an absolute disaster. I finally got it off. Now this, on my particular model, the stereo is larger. You have this piece on the bottom. I don't know if this is the internal hard drive or what it is, but I can't get this out of the car because these plastic tabs down here. I feel like I'm gonna have to take apart all this, which I'm not exactly sure how to do. So, you know, you see a lot of these installation videos online and they make it look like it's just an absolute breeze. This is an absolute disaster trying to get this apart just to put the screen in, which I know that part is not difficult. So I'm going to keep playing with this and hope I can eventually figure it out. I'm back to my phone again. The Osmo Action keeps falling off the sunroof while I'm filming, so I apologize. I'm back to my phone, but this will give you guys a better view now. You take the wiring harness that they give you, and if you have this green optical plug, you have to unplug it from the original harness, plug it into this one, and then it snaps into the back of the factory unit. And then the other end of the aftermarket harness will plug into the original harness wire that was originally plugged into the back of the radio. So I think you guys are pretty straightforward there. I know I'm not showing you this, so I realize this is going to be not as good as it originally was because this is a lot of work. And getting this apart to where it is now has been a real headache. But you can do it. Just take your time, because you know you worry you're going to break something. And to this point, I don't think I have yet. But boy, I'm kind of surprised that I haven't. And at that point, you're just going to run all the wires up into where the original screen was. You can see I got the aftermarket one laying here. And then you're going to plug in the wires like this. The wire, the main white plug that comes up goes there. Over here, you're going to plug in your original 4-pin right there. And then over here, I don't have it all plugged in yet, but that blue plug, we're going to put the GPS antenna there. And the red one, you take that little cap off and your Wi-Fi antenna for the unit goes there. That's all I'm going to plug in. They do give you a speaker. Oh, I don't need that. And they give you a microphone. I don't plan on talking to the car. I don't think. I'll have to think about that one. I might put that in. And then you have a bunch of other cables, so like your backup cameras and stuff. This should work with the factory backup, so I shouldn't need to do that. That's if you're adding an aftermarket one. So now the fun part is getting all this stuff put back in here now. In a little bit I'll show you, but I have turned this on. The screen does work. Everything seems to be functioning correctly, and that's a huge relief. I have not tested the backup camera yet, and that's one thing I want to do before I actually get this all put back together and find out that there's something I don't have hooked up correctly. And whenever you want to go to the iDrive system, I would go back to it and it flickers, and it was just, the screen was flickering and it was impossible to see. They tell you in here in the manual that your password to get into that stuff here is the 1314. Now you can go through and test them out, and I tried a few and still did it, and then I finally found one. I clicked on it, went back out, and thank God the iDrive screen all displayed correctly. It was almost like it was some sort of a refresh rate problem because it would just flicker. It's really weird. Now, there's things you can do to recode the car, so that would have been the next thing. I could have used my Carly module to reprogram and tell the computer it had a different screen. But usually you can find one here, and be that my factory one was 8 inches and this is 12. You know, it's close enough that I obviously I did not need to tell it. You know, it didn't think I had like a 6-inch screen or something. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and try to put some more of that stuff installed here. I'll check back with you guys in a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and get the Wi-Fi antenna hooked up and the GPS module. So the Wi-Fi antenna is going to go here. I was pushing it towards the blue, and that's not right. I'm just gonna, this is gonna need to be screwed on, okay? So it's gonna take a little bit of patience here. This little coax type connection on this. Screw this on. Okay, and then we're going to try to find a spot to put this. I'm going to probably try to mount it back behind here somewhere using this provided sticky tape on the back side of the antenna. Let's go ahead and also, while we're at it, attach the GPS module. I want to put this one up here somewhere too. You want to put it somewhere probably up towards the top of the dashboard so it has less stuff to go through to pull the GPS signal through. And this should go, I believe it's going to go, let's see, maybe like this. And I think we are connected to it. A little snap. And that looks like that is correct. So, that should be good. What I'm going to do now is just go ahead and find a spot to go ahead and mount these. And then we'll go ahead and do some more testing. Alright, it's getting a bit dark in here, so I want to try to get this wrapped up. So, once you get this all back in here, you need to make sure you obviously test everything. And if your radio and satellite radio is working, don't let that make you think that the audio is working and you don't need the auxiliary jack. Because I thought that was the case, had this unit pushed back in, but I had no sound coming from the actual new screen. It's you know, it's just running quietly. You're still getting your factory radio, but you're not getting the aftermarket sounds. So you can play around with some of the auxiliary switching and stuff, but you need the auxiliary. So that's what I needed. So I had to pull it back out, run the auxiliary jack here to test it. And once I did that, fired up the screen, and everything started playing just fine. Now you do have to go in to your iDrive and switch your auxiliary to the auxiliary input, and that'll work. So then if you want to go back to your factory radio, you're just going to go back to the iDrive system and go to your radio, click radio, and it should start playing your radio. When you want to go back to listen to any kind of sound or video on here, you just have to navigate to the auxiliary and then touch your screen and go into your screen. Not a big deal. And I'll play around with it and see if there's some way I can get it to switch, you know, between an automatic and manual switching mode. We'll see if it can switch once the auxiliary jack now is being functioned. There's a good chance that we may not have to do it manually. It may automatically do it. I just needed that input. So now I'm going to have to run the auxiliary jack around and up and into the jack, which shouldn't be a big deal. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to get the rest of this stuff put back in, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like with everything installed. All right, everything is installed. Now, following this progress, this video, you could probably see some frustration at times. This is not as straightforward and as easy as you might see in some of the other channels. These other channels, lots of times these are professional installers. They've done this, they've ripped into these cars before. They know exactly where to pry, how to go about this. But, you know, this is the first time I've done this particular type of install, and this is the first time this dashboard's been apart. Anytime the car's dashboard's never been apart, all those clips and everything in there has never been undone, and it's a lot harder to get undone than they would be the second time. Now, everything's back together. This is a little bit, like, not perfect here, I guess, but it's not a big deal. But getting this face plates on here was not super easy. I know I probably skipped some little bits here and there as I was frustrated in filming, but you guys got the gist of the install. Now, I didn't install the mic. I may have mentioned this earlier, but I didn't install the mic. I'm planning on using the car's Bluetooth system for phone calls. And there's an option here to tell which Bluetooth to use. So we'll do that. But pretty much, you know, the GPS works, all that stuff, so I can go to navigation. Now, it may not have a lock in here. But yeah, it's pulling up all the information there. Don't want to guys necessarily give out my home address there. But yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful. It works really, really well. Now, you do need to go in here and change it if you have the factory backup camera to tell it in the settings, which I believe it was going to be in the settings, and then it's going to be your regular settings here. And you have down here camera selection, and you can see OEM camera is what we want so that it uses that camera. If you install an aftermarket, you'd have to select that, or a 360 camera here. This is going to use the factory camera. You can change the brightness of the screen. Fuel, I switched to gallons. Temperature, I like to use Fahrenheit here in the US. Select your music app, video app. There's so many settings, and then there's all those factory settings. They give you a code, and this car's 1314. Lets you get into the factory settings to change stuff around, which I needed to do because, and I'm certain I mentioned this earlier, when I go to car info, I'm back to the iDrive system. And in the iDrive system, this screen was just flickering and I couldn't hardly read it. And I finally found one of the settings in the factory stereos that fit this car, and it's all stretched so we don't have the cutoff like a lot of times you see where the smaller screens, like the 6-inch, it wants to display it like this, and you have to go into the car's coding and trick it, the computer, to think you have a bigger screen, which I did not have to do. I do have to use the auxiliary jack, which I mentioned earlier. That's just running around here and coming up the side, no big deal. So when I want to listen to the music on the head unit here, I do have to go to the auxiliary, and I have the volume turned all the way up on that. But when I'm listening to the radio, AM, FM, or satellite radio, I do need to go back to the iDrive system, and you just listen to it from there. And you want to go back to any music coming off here. You want to go to auxiliary, including Android Auto. Now I'm not going to give you guys a full review here of the screen. I'll probably make a follow-up video, but just some of the basic stuff. I mean, usually if you just tap the screen here to go back, and there we are, to the Android system. And then if we want to go to the apps, we're going to go to Z-Link 5, and that's going to be our Android Auto there. So you can see we got music playing here, and we got Google Maps. So even though I have built-in navigation on the car, I don't need to use that. I can use the Android Auto one here. Let's see if we can go back. It's kind of doing something goofy here at the moment. But yeah, the Z-Link is going to be here. Not exactly sure why it did that. We'll go back to it, and there we are. Yeah, you can use the built-in navigation with the GPS module here, or a lot of times I'll be using the Android Auto. So when I go to the Android Auto here, you can see it's going to pull up the different apps that are compatible whenever you're driving a car. And I should be able to use the phone calls. I believe it's going to use the mic in my phone, I believe, for that. That's pretty much it. I mean, I think this is a really awesome. It just looks beautiful. Looks like a factory fit. It does look like there may be a little bit smidgen more space here than here. There is. I just noticed that now, and I'll make sure I got this all seated. But it is screwed down, so it's 99% perfect. Yeah, it's good enough. I mean, it just looks awesome. When you're driving this at night, I turn the brightness down. I don't know if it will auto adjust. We'll have to see. So it can be a bit bright, and if you don't want to be gawking at the screen so much that you take your eyes off the road, I already do that enough with the digital gauge cluster. That if you stumbled across my channel for this, be sure to check this out. This is just as cool, I think. Well, pretty close to it, and they're around the same price. So if you're interested in this screen, I'll have a link down to this, I think it's Navi official, something like that. The AliExpress store. Came by UPS, pretty quick. Took a little longer because there were some shipping delays that were not anything that the seller had anything to do with. UPS was just taking their time getting out of Shenzhen. But anyway, it all installed perfectly. You guys saw the nice packaging, but obviously there's no install instructions. So we figured it out on our own. Alright guys, if you're new to the channel and you like this kind of content, anything from real cars to RC cars, drones, RC boats, all that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. And while you're at it, click that bell. That way you'll be notified anytime I upload one of my new videos. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.